Hey everyone, welcome to Founders 365. This is me, Steven Haggerty, and today we have Mr. Adam Stevens. He is founder of Intelligent Eating. Thank you for being on the show, Adam. How you doing?
Very welcome. No, good. Nice to see you, mate.
Yeah, good. Nice to virtually see you. We've never met in person.
What's the difference?
Although, you know, our paths have crossed in many different lives.
Very true.
It's very odd. Very odd indeed. We used to drink in the same pub like many moons ago.
That's true.
In France. So that's a whole nother story. So founder of Intelligent Eating. A lot of people know you. You're a very well-known person out there. You're always speaking the truth. So what is Intelligent Eating? How long have you been around and what's your mission? Let's put it that way.
Intelligent Eating is not one diet. It's not a vegan diet for a start. That's the first thing people need to know. It's not promoting a vegan diet. It's promoting whatever diet is applicable for whoever I'm working with to achieve their health goal. Started in 2011 on the back of a really shit event, which you may know about, which was the death of my stepfather suddenly. Mm-hmm. He was living in the south of France, eating what we thought was a very heart-healthy Mediterranean diet. And unfortunately, he dropped dead suddenly at the age of 62. Yeah. I thought that's not normal. So I started to do a lot of research into that and it went from there. So it's been going for, what really is coming up, I suppose, to eight, maybe 9 years, I suppose, 9 years. And it's phenomenal, the growth. When I first started, it was to see if I could just uncover what had happened to him. On the back of it, you got a Facebook page with 10,000 people. I've been doing TEDx talks. I've been invited to speak at conferences all over the world. What the hell's that about?
How's that happened?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. So it's really actually, I've created a movement somehow, which is cool.
Don't sound so surprised. It's a good movement, right?
I think so, and I think really that's the point of it. Is that people realise that the whole intent actually is very positive.
Yeah.
It's not out to sell some supplement or sell some potion or sell some lotion or whatever, or shakes or meal replacers or whatever. What people are realising, and this is the one commonality that I've spotted right since the start, and I was guilty of this, is that people are confused, and that's what causes these problems. These are health problems we're talking about here.
When you say confused, confused in what way? Why are they confused?
Well, there's a number of reasons. I mean, it comes down to belief systems. We're all brought up to believe, for example, you're probably brought up, to believe that, maybe you need milk for calcium, for example, or you've got to eat your meat for protein, or you've got to have 3 square meals a day, or whatever it might be. And then also you've got the food companies are highly targeted with their marketing, and then what diet's best? What you're trying to do, is it high carb, low carb, high fat, low fat? You need more omega-3.
There's so much information out there, isn't there?
Right, a huge amount of information,
left, right, and center.
Yeah. So how do you know what's right?
But also, it's loads of information from quote unquote like reputable sources. NHS,
right,
big government agencies, these sort of things. So, as a user, as a human, how are you supposed to know? As a user, how are you supposed to know?
Yeah,
what's the best route?
A user is quite a good word, actually, because no, I'll tell you why. I mean, the correct word I would use for this would be consumer, but user is actually a really good word, because actually a lot of these foods are low-grade addictions. That's the reality of it. So how can you do it? I mean, it's virtually impossible. That's the crux of it. To do it, everybody knows they should eat more fruit and veg and whatever, but the point of it is how do you know? Well, the thing is, you don't, and this is what happens. People get blown about. So it's not just the belief systems you might have from childhood, which is the usual kind of narrative of, kind of coaching crap and stuff like that. But actually, you've got to have some level of critical thinking in your brain, which is going to go, right, if somebody's saying to me this is healthy, I need to question why. Who are they? What evidence is it? What's their agenda? When have they known this information? And what would be the reason? And then use the best possible evidence that you've got available to start to make an informed choice for yourself. And that's what it is. And you can do that with a multiple of sources. It doesn't have to be just one. I spend my time trying to make it into one, but it's not possible. Things change because the market changes.
Yeah, exactly. one big thing I always notice about food, diet, whatever the word we want to put on it, is it's like the trends, right? We had the sugar tax trend a couple of years ago, where everyone suddenly realized that sugar's bad for you. It's like, come on, it's pretty obvious that it's bad for you. Now we've obviously got the vegan trend. Where do these trends come from, do you think? And is it a good thing that they become trendy?
Well, I think it's good awareness, but the problem, and this is where it becomes dangerous. For example, I mean, you just gave away one of your belief systems there, which is brilliant, which is sugar's bad for you. Now, hold on a second. Let's go to rural Peru, for example, for a moment. Well, these people might eat 3 or 4 kilograms of sugar cane a day.
Yeah.
Is that bad? Is bananas full of sugar? Is that bad? No. So sugar's not bad. It's the packaging that sugar comes in. You see, immediately what we've done there is we've just taken apart what you said was the case, which isn't necessarily the case. Yeah, you know, eating an orange all it contains is sugar. Is that bad? Well, I don't think anybody would say eating an orange is bad for you, right? No. So we're talking about, then we have to get into the delves of things such as what actually are we talking about, and that's what people don't understand. So these trends can be useful for awareness. But they can also be dangerous as well. And so we have things, for example, now things like vegan January or whatever it's called.
Veganary.
Something like that. And they can be useful, but the problem is a lot of these things that they're telling you what not to eat, but they're not telling you what you should be eating necessarily. And you got to look at who's funding these things, and trends and fads very much they're in existence to sell marketing. It's advertising space. That's the crux of it, and that's a problem.
The world we're caught up in, though, isn't it? There's marketing is everything.
Absolutely, and this is the thing, and the people that really can get to the bottom of this stuff, and this is why I am so noisy online and make so much. Passion is the wrong word. I don't like that. I think that's cliche bullshit. But I think that I want to spread this as far and wide as I can, and maybe we'll talk about it in time. It's because if people couldn't just understand for themselves, actually, this is simply how it is. It's simple education. And once you've got education, then you can make the decision for yourself. Well, what a smart way of doing things rather than being told what you can and can't eat.
It gives you the control, right?
It's massively more empowering for a start. And then you can just decide if you want to improve your health or erode your health. You've got 2 choices then. And, you know, then it's okay. It's up to you, you know.
Exactly. You know, you've been going 8 years. Obviously, wasn't a great start in terms of the reason you started. It was started almost out of necessity because of what happened.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest barrier for you in terms of getting the change out there, getting the message out there over the years? And has it changed over the years, or has it always been a constant similar barriers?
That's a really good question, actually. At first, people thought I was crazy. And in terms of probably 95% of people thought I was crazy. Now probably only 2 or 3% of people think I'm crazy. So things have changed massively. And if you start to look at things such as Google Trends and search terms and things like that, things like plant-based diets and health and wellness and things like type 2 diabetes and the conditions that are really starting to affect people are really becoming much more prevalent on people's radar. So that blind faith in the medical profession is actually getting lost now. And people are starting to go, hold on a minute, maybe actually it is more sensible. So yes, I've had to build traction and momentum, but there's been a lot of times where people have gone, I don't believe it. And there's been many times where people have come back to you, and you probably had the same, where you get a message, I've been following you for years.
Yeah.
Right. You know, that sort of thing. And they're the people that have ridiculed me over the years before.
Yeah.
And so on. So it's certainly not been a linear journey by any means.
It's almost like that classic, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
It's kind of like that. I'm not sort of trying to do that, really. It's kind of 3 stages of truth. I can't remember whose quote that is. You can look it up. I don't want to be plagiaristic in any way, but it's kind of like, you know, all truths go through 3 stages. And it's kind of, that's the point, you know, of being oppressed, then ridiculed, and then eventually it becomes accepted as self-evident. I think that's the truth of it. But there's nobody that would argue that eating more fruits and vegetables is a bad thing.
No.
That's just where we are with it now.
Exactly. Let's talk about the vegan area then. Let's talk about vegan, what the health, all these documentaries that are coming out and people are watching them and some sort of pins are dropping and they are becoming vegan overnight. What's that about? Why are people doing this? And because the way I look at it is, veganuary is great. Like we said, it has some great benefits, but come February 1st, a lot of people are just going to go back to their old ways or just, I've checked that box. So what is it about?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, what happens in February? What is it? Meat February? What's everybody been doing? Going out eating, a big steak every night for February. I mean, I think it's good in terms of awareness when you look at it from a respect of animal welfare and the environment. Yeah. But the way I approach it, quite honestly, is I'm the most important animal on the planet, and I don't say that in a narcissistic way. I say it in a genuine way. I'm looking after myself first, I mean, it's terrible all these orangutans or whatever are dying because we're cutting down the rainforest and blah blah blah, and these pigs and cows and sheep or whatever getting slaughtered. I don't think anybody would agree about that's necessarily a good thing, but I think the problem with these things like this vegan January and whatever is that people are doing it and they don't know why they're doing it. Yeah. They don't understand why they're doing it. They just follow a set plan. And what are their emotional drivers behind making those changes? And that's a really dangerous way to change your behavior if you don't know why you're doing it. And a lot of people don't know why. And that's a problem.
Again, it comes back to the trend, the Instagram sort of mentality that we have now, which is an interesting one to look at, but it's also one that thinks that it's a short-term fix. It's a plaster, right?
Well, I mean, you mentioned things such as What the Health and these types of movies and things like that. I mean, the best one out of those is probably one that was in 2011, which was called Forks Over Knives, which I watched. But I actually, I mean, to tell you the truth, I actually hadn't watched that many of those, and there's quite a lot actually now on Netflix. I wasn't aware. I watched something. I only watched What the Health actually last week, and I was actually, what the fuck? I've not seen this, but I've interviewed all these doctors that are in this. I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. I think they have good intent, but I think it's very, very easy for people to watch those. And if they're already on that side kind of thing, it's just going to reinforce. If they're on the other side, I think it just causes friction and they go, this is crap. And I get that. And I think the problem with it is that what people don't realize is that this is a 90-minute documentary. Yeah. Whereas for me to actually understand what's right and what's wrong, and I'm not pushing any agenda for any particular diet. I'm just going on the best possible scientific evidence available. Yeah. For you to do that, you're going to need, months and months of training. Now, nobody's going to sit down and watch a 3-month documentary on Netflix that's actually going to be a scientific lecture. That's not going to happen. That's not entertainment. Yeah. And so, 100%. I think that's the difference. So these things are good for awareness. But I think that's all they are. I wouldn't read into it any deeper than that. It can be a useful stepping stone, but that's all. That.
One thing I've always admired about you from having been connected to you for a while is your work is that scientific base. I always see you posting things about getting bloods done and how these change. So why did you go down that road? Why did you go down, okay, this needs to be scientifically backed?
Well, I mean, there's a multitude of reasons, really, but the primary one is because, I mean, people say don't slag off competition, but the truth of it is, I will do if necessary. And so, for example, I'll get approaches from people that say, here's this product that we've got, Forever Living, for example, and it really helps people with IBS. So I'll go and I'll look in the repository that I can find it in, which I only mentioned that because I was looking at it earlier. And I go and look at it and I find the actual medical paper that's on there, and it's got randomized control, placebo-controlled study on the effect of aloe vera. Okay, it was done by University Hospital Swansea, and it showed that actually it had no effect whatsoever compared to the control group. So I'm like, hold on a minute, what you're presenting here is not true. What you're selling is marketing and hope, and that is not scientific. So so where my background is physics, what I'm doing is I'm using it's called first principles in physics, which is rather than just modeling what somebody else might do, what I'm doing is going, hold on a minute, right? If you're going to tell me something, I need to go away and do some research on it. and see if it's true.
Mm.
And I'll see if it's true based on the best possible standards of evidence. And I use that phrase a few times. But what I mean by that, for people listening who may not understand what I mean by that, is lowest standard of evidence will be mate down the pub says this works, therefore it's good, and you believe him, right? Yeah, cool, okay, fair enough. Yeah, or Bob in accounts says, but this worked for him, therefore it's good for everybody, right? Whereas it ranges up to systematic reviews, which is a combination of case studies, reports, cohorts, huge epidemiological studies, all put together, and then you end up with a conclusion. That's the type of evidence that I would look to review. And so if you do it on that way, then it becomes not my opinion. It becomes essentially something that you can't really argue.
Yeah.
Because the research is there.
Do you think people care enough about that, though?
I don't think they care about that at all in the slightest. What I do think they care about is the outcome. And I think that's the important bit of it. As you say, we live in this society of fads and trends and things like that. People just want to go, I want to get a result quickly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but if you've ended up 3 stone overweight, for example, you're not going to lose 3 stone in a month unless you water fast, for example, which is possible in some cases, but that's under medical supervision. And people need to realize that if they've eaten themselves into health problems, then the vast majority of the time they can eat themselves out of a health problem. And the current, you sort of talked about the NHS, for example, earlier. A lot of the solutions that are presented, pharmaceutical solutions that are presented, they're treating the symptoms of the problem. They're not treating the cause. And you have to treat the cause of a problem. The same in business. You have to treat the cause. Otherwise, you're never going to fix the problem long term. So it's an interesting question. So that's why I've gone down the route of that. It's my background, but also it's the only way that I can be credible in what I'm presenting.
And when you have new clients, are they really receptive to this?
Some are, some aren't. I mean, it's a big spectrum. Some people just come to me and say, look, I've got this problem. I need help with it. There are some people who are extremely skeptical. I like those people. And I say that because they go on to become fantastic referral sources for what I do.
Yeah, biggest success story, I bet.
Absolutely, yeah. But I mean, some people want the information, some don't. The truth of it is, I think it's like with so many things. People, it's the same, isn't it? People don't buy a drill because they want a drill. They want a hole. It's that kind of thing.
Put the painting on the wall.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, there's a broad spectrum, but there are people, and, to be frank, in 2016, 30% of my clients were dietitians. So
really, wow.
Yes, so go figure.
That's amazing. Where do you see in terms of like industry and people, where do you see the biggest, I don't want to use the word problems, but I'm gonna. So where do you see the biggest problems in sort of industry? Because you always hear about, again, marketing, I guess, or advertising, but you hear about the professional who sits at a desk all day and only gets, almost like prison, only gets to be let out for an hour at lunch.
Yeah.
Is that really the biggest problem, or is there more of a secret, hidden biggest problem?
It's a very difficult question to answer without a 30-minute answer. It's like so many things. There's not one problem going on as such. There are multiple problems. What you've really got, and this goes back, I'll loop back to what I said before, because I think it's probably the simplest way of answering it, is what you've got is confusion, right? So what I mean by that is you've got, on one side, you've got the truth, and your fresh fruit and veg or whatever. And the other side, you've got large pharmaceutical organizations with lots and lots of cash. And in the middle, you've got the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, who will set the guidelines for the NHS. And the NHS are going to be torn as to how they present their information. This sort of stuff happens. So it's not one problem. This is very much multifaceted. The government have done some things about this, which is things like Change for Life, for example. It is good. Less sugary drinks, for example. That's a sensible move. Couch to 5K, sensible move. But there has to be a line where they have to be careful, because telling people what to do, even if it's the truth, is not a vote winner. And I still don't talk about politics, but it does come into it. People's belief systems. You start to challenge people's belief systems. They don't like that.
Probably not a great example, but I think one that was very much in your face was that whole, Jamie Oliver, when he wanted to change the school dinners, and there was that iconic video of the mums that were handing hamburgers through the fence to their kids because they didn't want them to eat the healthier food that Jamie had made the school do. That's such a really clear example of belief systems that are being adopted by the children, right? Because as we all know, beliefs are adopted a lot of the time. So we need to be influencing, even me, I need to be influencing the younger generation. When I see people are born in 2018, it's just scary.
Man, I'm 40.
Yeah. So, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the belief system and how the normal person, because you're an expert, you're a pioneer for this, but how can the normal person influence others to help this situation?
It's really simple. It's really simple. It's the same as anything else. You do it with your wallet. It's as straightforward as that. You go into whatever supermarket that you might go to or grocery store, and as you walk down the healthier choice, and you avoid buying the shit choice.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, obviously, there's an intermediary step, which is knowing which is which. But for most people, they actually do know. And really, that's what if everybody made just a little modest change, that sort of thing. I mean, it's slight edge, it's ripple effect. Okay, it's all these things combined. That stuff makes a huge difference. I mean, the work that Jamie Oliver did with the school dinners, it's to be applauded, fine, but it was very flash in the pan.
Yeah.
What we're really seeing now is that people are starting to actually really, when they and I notice this when I go into supermarkets, I see people picking things up and looking at labels and going, is this actually something that's actually good for me? Because people are really starting to question it, which is really, I think, a very good thing. It's important to do that.
And not just looking at the traffic light system, I'm guessing.
Well, this is the problem you've got. I mean, in the UK, there's this last count when I last reviewed this last year, there were 7 different types of traffic light labeling systems. Now, most people probably think,
I didn't know that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, most people probably think there's only one. There's 7 different types. So you've got that. So what people have to understand about, and this is just kind of goes on from belief systems, but I think it's highly relevant, is that people tend to buy, and this is still the case, they'll buy based on what is on the front of the packet, which is all marketing. It can say anything it wants, and that the fonts, the colors, it might be even textures used in packaging, this type of thing. But the only 2 pieces of information that have to be there by law, that have to be factually correct, are the nutritional information and the ingredients. Everything else is marketing. So that's where people need to start, is start picking things up and actually looking at it and going, I need to know that. It's important. Otherwise, it's analogous to getting in your car, in the UK, with absolute certainty that you're going to drive on the left-hand side of the road. And if you don't, you're going to cause big problems.
Yeah.
With food at the moment, people are kind of veering sort of maybe to drive on the left or maybe to drive on the right, depending on what they're getting thrown around by.
Is it just becoming overwhelming, do you think?
I think people are hugely overwhelmed by the information out there, hugely. And that's the whole ethos of what I'm trying to do as such, is to remove people from this marketing spin, release them from it, which is what people need.
Yeah.
It's critical.
So let's talk about that. You've been going around 8 years. Mr. Danny Matthews, who commented on the video, which I never shout out comments, but he just said that this next decade is going to be massive for you, Adam. Very nice of him. What's gonna happen then? What's your goal for the next 8 years, considering how much great work you've done in the last 8 years?
Okay. Well, I mean, there's a few things that are going to be happening. The first thing is what I'm doing is going to be licensed, because at the moment it's too much for me to work on as such in terms of dealing directly with clients. There'll still be people that I will need to look after, but when it comes to general population weight loss stuff, that's where I'll get licensed out. I will spend a lot more time on developing the brand, creating partnerships. For example, I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, I did some work with Whole Foods. That was good.
I watched your talk on there.
Yeah, that was good. See that, and that was a good example of what I created. So that was Whole Foods said, "Hey, you can come and do like a talk here. That's cool. You can use the room that we've got for a couple of hours. Not a problem." I thought 3 or 5 people would turn up. 153 people. 153 people turned up.
Yeah.
I was like, what? You know, and I was, to be honest, I was quite nervous, to be honest with you. but you know, it went down pretty well. But here you go. I wasn't in it for the money at that time. I had nothing to offer anybody. People were like, "What can we buy from him?" I'm like, nothing. You know.
When did you? That's a good question, actually. Just to interject. When did you make this a business then? In terms of, you know, services for money.
Yeah, I mean, and no pun intended, but it happened very organically, in the sense that people started to ask me questions. You know, they'd send me pictures of food or something and say, "Hey, is this healthy?" Or, you know, "Have you heard anything about this diet?" or whatever. And where it actually happened is I'm not commercially minded in that sense, right? So where it started to happen was actually I gave a talk. It was a Chamber of Commerce event. Somewhere, I think it was just outside Woking. Not the most exciting of places. It was on a golf club. No, it wasn't. It wasn't particularly exciting. I think there were about 40 or 50 people there, and I gave a talk. And I gave a talk about, and I was being brutally honest about it. I was saying. And you know, the audience predominantly made up of guys from the age 40 to 60, solicitors and accountants predominantly were there. And I said, listen, I said, within the next 10 years, half of you in this room are going to end up having a heart attack and die. And the look I got there,
that must be the moment where you could hear a pin drop.
Well, put it this way, I was looking to where the fire exit was because I thought, shit, I've actually like told the truth here, and these people are not going to like this. You know, I mean, the stats are 1 in 4 people will end up having it at that age, and these are not guys in the best shape. You know, accountants, right? You know, they're living like kings and queens of past. And what drove it was very interesting. As a chap came up to me afterwards, a partner at a law firm. In Guildford, and he said to me, he said, "Adam, he said, I don't know what you offer or what you sell," he said, "but whatever that message that I've just listened to," he said, "I don't think I can stop thinking about that." He said, "You need to do something with this, if not for you, for the good of everybody else." And so, to answer your question, what's going to happen over the next 10 years with this? What needs to happen? This intelligent eating thing needs to be a household name, to the point where when somebody's got a health problem. Then they're down the pub or they're talking to a friend in the office or whatever it might be. They go, "Oh, you need to do intelligent eating." That's where it needs. That's where it's going. That's the direction I need to be moving with it. So that's that's probably the best answer I can give you on what this is moving.
Unless I say, "How are you going to do that, Adam?"
Well, it's through licensing, brand development. I mean, it's been continued. I mean, there's been things that I would never have imagined would have occurred. I mean, you know, some people would say that a TEDx is not a particularly great asset to have in terms of public speaking. But if somebody had said to me, "You're going to get invited to come," and I mean, I didn't even apply. I was invited to come and do something like that.
That was last year, wasn't it?
It was April last year, and I was like, "Okay, yeah, cool, all right, I'll do that." I sort of made it up the night before because I kind of just thought, well, I'll just play around, you know, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. But again, what was so interesting with that, and all the talks were good, don't get me wrong. Well, what was interesting with mine was you could see the audience were polarized. And I love watching audience reactions. You could see that half the people in the room were nodding their heads going, "This guy's right, but I don't like it." And then half the audience were just like, "I'm going to dismiss this." And that's the ego kicking in. The ego saying, "I'm not going to believe it. I don't want to hear bad things about what I do," which I understand. So, you know, as it's grown, I've started. So, for example, the doctors in What the Health that you'll see in there. Well, I interviewed all of those, and that was. I mean, the only other organisations to do that is one. So it was an organisation called Plant-Based News. I mean, they're massive. And you'll probably end up with them all over your feed now because we've mentioned that term. But you know,
I hope so. Subscribe.
Voice recognition is real. So
that's my Alexa there.
Yeah, right. So this is it. So voice is the next big thing. But
Everyone's
what was
saying,
interesting with that was the only other organisations that got to interview doctors was the BBC and the Guardian, and then you've got me.
yeah,
I'm like, okay, this thing's growing faster than me. So it's
that's
really
amazing.
exponential with
Yeah.
what's happening, and I don't think that's just driven by me purely. I think that'd be arrogant to suggest that. I think it's overall trend that people are going. I
No,
think we need to take things more seriously.
no, dude, I say own it, right? Because I think there's been a huge shift in your from being connected to you, for 3-4 years now. I think it is. I think there's been a huge shift in terms of the quality in terms of how you're speaking to people and how they're bringing in, how they're absorbing that information, and the fact that they're starting to listen, and that people are now start. But one thing I was curious about is, do you always think that there has to be a catalyst for this sort of change? So something has to happen for someone to go, oh yeah, maybe I should speak to Adam. But in reality, I'm sure what we want is to not have that catalyst.
I think there has to be. I don't think it has to be a catalyst. I think there has to be a reason. I think what I'm doing is providing it. I am a catalyst for change. I think that's what really we're looking at. I might be using a slightly different definition. I'm thinking of chemistry, which is simply an element you'd add in to speed up the process, speed up a reaction, but doesn't change itself. And I'm not changing myself as such, but I'm speeding up the process.
But if you're telling a room that they're going to die, it's gonna have an effect.
Well, what that tends to do is cause people to question their behaviours, and make them aware. I mean, that's the whole irony of this whole thing. Up until probably age 20, 22, I wanted to become an anaesthetist, which would be spending my life putting people to sleep, and now I spend my life waking people up. So it's.
I feel like you definitely need to be putting that out there more in terms of that, like analogy.
Well, I mean, it's reality, and this is the thing. I mean, I do, but again, it's I've skipped a few steps, but there's some that you can't. I mean, it's there's a conference in LA that I'm speaking at next month, which is another great platform. But it does take time. These things take time. And for every paper that gets published that says you should eat more vegetables, there's one that comes out and says, well, vegetables are going to give you 20 different types of cancer if you eat too much of it, and so on. And so the public
I think there was a website at one point that was like, the Daily Mail gives you cancer, and it showed every like news article that completely contradicted each other. Like, that really sums up just the media and everything that's out there.
Of course.
But, Adam, to like summarize, and I always ask my guests this is, and I feel like you're going to give 3 gems here, but I want if anyone's listening, or I hope they are, well, for the people listening, what are 3 things that they can do right now that is going to improve their health?
Okay, so the first one is to start drinking more water. Now I'm going to take a bit of time just to speak about it, just probably 1 minute.
Time as you want.
This 1 minute. This is because it's crucially important. Okay, we live in a country now, wherever you are in the Western world, within probably 10 footsteps, you've probably got access to 3 or 4 clean, safe sources of drinking water. Now, for that reason, we don't value it. But if I said you've got gold in 3 or 4 different places, you'd be like, wow, that's amazing. Now, water is crucial. In certain parts of the world, people have to walk miles and miles every day to get water. Most people in the Western world, they can improve their health dramatically simply by drinking more water. We are land mammals. So we should do the same as all other land mammals do, which is when we wake up, drink water. That's one thing. That's the one most powerful thing that they can do. The second thing that I would suggest that people do, and this is not quite as important. That water is fundamental, really, really important. And it's tap water's fine. People don't need to go and buy all this stupid stuff and buy this electrolyte water and all this kind of stuff. That's marketing, right? In the UK, it's fine. Western world water, it's okay to drink it, right? Okay, it's not going to kill you, right? Unless you. It's just there are very few cases where and people will know about it if they're going to end up overhydrating, but it's highly unusual. The second one I would suggest is people actually start to ask questions about if they're prescribed medications, and this is important because the average age where people are getting prescribed medications is coming down year on year by a lot. Wow. So if you look at, for example, blood pressure medications, it used to be about 45. I think when I first started this, for average age prescription for that. Now it's like, I think 37 or something.
Wow.
Now here's the interesting thing with it. It's similar with statin drugs as well. So when somebody's prescribed a drug by a doctor, they're usually in a state of fear. If a doctor says, hey, you've got high cholesterol, right? Okay. You're sat there, you're going, oh shit. And the doctor says you've got to take this medication. The questions to be asking are, okay, what are the side effects? What's something like the NNT? Now, NNT is something called number needed to treat. You'd think that means one. So an example of that would be alcohol. If you drink a large quantity of alcohol, you will experience effects from it, right? You'll get drunk, right? With statin drugs, this is not all of them, but with the vast majority of statin drugs, the NNT is 300, meaning that only 1 in 300 people who haven't had a prior cardiovascular event, like a heart attack or a stroke, will actually get any benefit from it. But 1 in 15 people will suffer adverse side effects. So you're 20 times more likely as such to end up getting side effects that are negative than actually getting the therapeutic benefits. So question things. Actually start to use that critical thinking that you've got and start to question why. Because the motive in most cases is cash. And the third thing, which is really important, what people can do to improve their health, take the blinkers off and start reading labels in the supermarket. Simple. So simple. Just start picking things up, forget what the marketing says, and look at on the back of it and start to understand what label reading means. And that's it. Just that awareness alone starts to bring people, you get what you focus on. It's simple.
I mean, I didn't know there were 7 different types of traffic lights. That blew
There's
my
probably
mind.
10 now. I haven't reviewed it for a year.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's no, Adam, thank you. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to speak to you?
Intelligent eating across all the socials. They'll find a way.
That's what I like. Nice and easy. Thank you so much for Adam for coming on. This has been Founders 365. I've been Steven Haggerty. Thank you all for watching and listening.